Welcome to a very special episode of the Digital Days Gaming Podcast. I am your host, Michael Swick. Co-host Dave could not make it for this, but I am joined by the creators of the upcoming documentary, Pretending I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story. If you gentlemen would introduce yourselves, please.
My name is Ralph D'Amato. I'm the producer of the film and former Neversoft producer as well.
My name is Ludvig Gür. I'm a film director from Sweden, and I directed Pretending I'm Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story.
Even though the title is pretty self-explanatory, can you guys give us a little bit of a elevator pitch for what the documentary is about?
You want to shoot, Ludvig? You go.
Sure. So the documentary is essentially about the influence that the legendary video game Tony Hawk's Pro Skater had on the gaming industry as well as the skateboarding industry, and how it turned skateboarding mainstream, and essentially the impact. And, it's really a document of the whole franchise itself and what led to its, rise and eventually its downfall.
What is the time frame that is being covered? Because I saw in the latest trailer you guys do talk about Tony Hawk's past. Are we looking at the full of the franchise?
We're looking at the full franchise of the Tony Hawk's Skater game, yes, until about EA Skate comes in. And but also I think Ralph was on that. We are actually covering some of the history of skateboarding as well, starting off in the 80s, right after Daisy Peralta, Dogtown, and the Sea Boys, and kind of go on how how that whole era of skateboarding actually impacted the creation of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in a really cool way.
Yeah, so we give the viewer a little bit of a brief history lesson on the history of skateboarding and how it got to a place in popularity that a video game company would invest a decent chunk of change to make a video game. So we kind of give you a little bit of backstory, and then we present in all of the games and one by one, and then even post the game series from when we were making it. Now there's a reboot that's coming out. So hopefully the series will just keep on going.
So listeners of the show know that I have a deep love for the Tony Hawk franchise. It came out, the first game came out right around I was 10 years old, and it got me really into gaming and just kind of cemented my love for gaming. It opened up different music to me, as well as got me doing video game tournaments. I remember going to FuncoLand and Game Crazy and doing tournaments for 2 and 3. I'm interested to hear your backgrounds with it. Ralph, I know you've worked on the game or worked on the franchise for a long time, but also Ludvig's history with it, because Ludvig is younger, I believe, when I looked up the IMDb. So I'm interested to see.
Just a little bit, not very much, but just just a little bit. So I could start. I started working at Neversoft December of '98. So when I started there, they had just started. We're in the middle of the demo that was pitched to Tony. So I was a sales guy. So I kind of switched careers, took a chance. At the time, I thought it was a risk, but it turned out to be the best thing I ever did, and took an opportunity to join, become a producer at Neversoft, and worked on the first 8 titles. And that was a totally fulfilling experience. Obviously the teams that I worked with, all the developers were amazing, and the skaters, and then developing, relationships with all of the skaters, Tony, Cab, Rodney, just a fantastic time in my career for sure.
And Ludvig?
Yeah, so obviously I played Tony Hawk's Skater growing up. I've been playing them since I was 4 years old when I think Tony Hawk's Skater 2 and 3 came out. And growing up, I didn't really connect to video games that much except for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, which I connect to in a very big way. So, in my teens, I was still completely obsessed with all the games, despite the whole skateboarding game genre being completely dead. This was probably around Skate 2, Skate 3. So I actually started a YouTube channel where I would make sort of amateur documentaries on Tony Hawk and stuff like that. And Ralph actually saw one of those, and that's how he found out about me, through YouTube. And, this is actually kind of another question that we're kind of going on right now, and it's essentially how we met. But yeah, so we essentially met up in Stockholm, and we both really wanted to make a documentary about the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater franchise. And, the rest is history.
Yeah, it was actually all the doing of my wife, because I saw Ludvig's video on YouTube, and And I showed it to her, and I was like, I really can't believe how much detail this guy put into this video. And she was the one that urged me to message him. Well, you should message him. Tell him that, you're a developer. He'd probably love to hear from me. And I did the typical kind of dude thing, no. And she kind of kept pushing and pushing. And finally, I just reached out to him and said, hey, as a developer, and I think he probably might have recognized my name as well, because Ludvig is a walking, talking encyclopedia of Tony Hawk. You name a music track, he'll tell you what game it is. You name a trick that came in, he'll tell you what game that trick started. So he knows pretty much everything about the series. Most things I've forgotten, he has in his memory. So yeah, so I reached out, we chatted. That same year, I believe, or the year after Ludvig, I came out to Sweden on a vacation, and we kind of met up, and that's how our kind of producer director relationship. At the time when I met him, he was younger, but I just was so blown away by how talented he was in creating these YouTube videos. And then he showed me a little short that he did back then, and that was when I was like, wow. My wife and I looked at it, and I was like, this guy is on his way to becoming a director. He knows everything about Tony Hawk. We gotta, about the skateboard game. We gotta make this happen. And yeah, we little by little, he eventually came out to California, stayed at my place. He went over, I hooked him up to meet Tony. He went out to meet Tony. He pitched the idea of the doc, and we just millions and millions of Skype hours later, we now have a documentary that's about to come out August 18th.
Wow, that's kind of amazing that it started with a YouTube channel that formed into this. Yeah,
and that's one of the things. We were in Mammoth. We were at the Mammoth Film Festival, and Ludvig got to kind of tell his story a little bit there as well. And it's inspiring for anybody, because anybody can start a YouTube channel, and anybody can create content, but rarely do people actually do it and keep on it and keep on doing what they love. And Ludvig just, he pushed through it and kept doing it, even though the series wasn't at the top of its game anymore. He kept on with that YouTube channel. And had he not posted that video and had he not had that channel, I would never know who Ludvig is.
So Ludvig, when you were messaged about it, what was like your reaction to it? Because I can imagine that, especially if you're such a fan of this franchise, that could be very exciting and almost scary, being reached out to by someone that worked on something that you appreciate.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, for sure, I was blown away. I remember actually showing the message to my brother and going pretty crazy because, we spent a whole, not a whole summer, but we definitely spent maybe a spring break on that video, History of Tony Hawkins amateur documentary. And, it didn't get that many views, but we were still kind of impressed. And then suddenly, Ralph reached out, and, we were actually blown away by that. And it was super cool. I actually didn't think it was real at first because obviously I was probably my first year of high school at that time, really young. But my mom always told me, no, you shouldn't believe strangers on the internet and stuff. So I remember actually asking him at one point, like, are you actually Ralph the Mother, or just no, I am. Okay, cool. Thank God.
Yeah, and I think I even had sent the video to Tony, and his reply was, yeah, I already saw that. It's kind of funny. It was like, yeah, I saw that already. I'm like, whoa, he beat me to it.
When did the idea of actually going for it and making like a full feature-length documentary, when did that start, and like how fast did that move once you guys decided to go for it?
I mean, I from my perspective, we probably have a little bit of different perspective on when it actually started. I think Ludvig had always wanted to do a just from these YouTube channel. He probably wanted to do a documentary on this video, like a real documentary, not that YouTube videos aren't real, but you know what I'm saying, a full released feature film type of documentary. I had wanted to do one. I got together with a couple other developers that were on the Hawk game. We did a skate app, and one of the guys, Chris Roush, who's actually in the film, he's a designer. I was talking to him about potentially doing a documentary, because I'm a documentary nut. Any document on any subject I'll watch. And one thing that he told me is that, if anybody should do it, it should be you. And that kind of stuck with me. But I didn't have I don't have any directing skills. I don't know much of, I've produced a lot of different things in my life, from video games to websites to apps and stuff, and content, but I've never done anything like this. So I think when it solidified is when, in my head, is when Ludvig came out to California on a visit. over the summer. He just graduated high school, I believe. Came out, we hung out, we played some hot games. He kicked my butt at them, of course, and we started talking seriously about this documentary. That was sort of our first conversation. In my mind, that's where the start was.
And for you, Ludvig?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I think Ralph actually reached out maybe a year earlier just to mention the idea, and obviously I was on it. I wanted to do it for sure. And we weren't really sure what it was going to be back then, but we definitely had an idea. And I think the moment Tony Hawk said that he'd be up for it as long as we can get Activision to actually agree to it as well for us to use all the footage and stuff. I think that was the moment that really started the whole project and started our weekly Skype sessions and stuff like that. And then eventually we shot the trailer in 2016. November, the same year I actually met Tony. So it was fast. It was definitely fast. But making the film itself was a pretty long process.
Yeah.
What was the approach to the documentary in terms of, was it always to just explore the entirety of it, or did that evolve over time? Or were there any specific inspirations when you were making this in terms of like the style of documentary you wanted to do?
We had Ludvig, and I think it's pretty typical for producers and director to kind of bump heads. And I definitely had an idea of what I wanted the documentary to be. And thankfully, we didn't go with that. We went with Ludvig's idea, because mine would not have been what we have now. I was thinking more focused more on video game. It was all really Ludvig's idea about, no, we should really kind of wind in and tell people a bit about skateboarding and the history, so that people know what it even is, and it appealed more to a mass audience than just people who like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater video games. So that direction, and we obviously at the beginning we bumped heads quite a bit, but then it became pretty obvious that his way was the way to go. It was and that's why he's the director and I'm the producer.
When you said early on that Ludvig met with Tony Hawk, did you guys have almost like a hit list of people you wanted to get for this documentary? If this person doesn't do it, it's not going to be as good, sort of situation? Did you guys like make that list, or were there two different lists of names that you guys wanted to get?
I think there were two different lists for sure, because Ralph worked at Neversoft, and obviously he kind of knew who pulled the strings there and stuff. So obviously I only had a game manuals to kind of base on who works in the game and stuff like that. But from the skaters, we definitely had a list of people we had to get for the film, and pretty much all of them actually agreed to be in it, and during the final cut and stuff like that. So yeah, it
was sort of a nice thing. Over the years, I'd worked, part of my production duties at Neversoft was getting the skaters logos, getting their outfits on their characters proper, and showing them their characters in the game and getting their approval. So I always had fairly good connections and relationships with all of the skaters, and it was sort of amazing one by one, from Tony to Cab to Rodney to Muska and Jamie, that it was fairly, I hate to say easy, but they were all on board from the get-go when I told them what we were trying to do. And it was, at that point, after that, it was just a matter of scheduling the time and getting the crew and having Ludvig kind of do all the stuff he needed to do to get the directing done. So it was that part of it, having had those relationships and working with these guys for 8 years, it was, it made things a little bit easier on getting the people that we wanted. There are always things in these things in interviews that we wanted to get that didn't happen, but there's not anything I would really switch, and I think Ludvig probably feels the same.
In terms of like getting interviews, it sounds like that was like pretty straightforward just because of connections. I think everybody associates music with Tony Hawk. When putting together the documentary, obviously the title of the film calls back to the music. Was it difficult getting music for this documentary? Were there like a couple songs that you were like, I definitely need to get a couple songs, or did you just want to do your own thing with the music? And were there any difficulties with putting together music for a documentary?
Yeah, I just want to say that first. That,
yeah, good.
Actually, when I worked with the editor of the film, and, I edited the film myself as well, but we had a second editor come in, we actually handpicked a lot of the tracks ourselves and just kind of like keep those in the film by the end. And, now that we're releasing the film, actually only 2 of those, maybe 14 tracks ended up getting cut. So Ralph did an amazing job securing the line.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, and a part of that is with our music supervisor, Jonathan McHugh, who is an award-winning music supervisor. He's worked on a ton of different movies, documentaries. But I also worked on the soundtracks for the games. That was one of my responsibilities as a producer at Neversoft is working with Activision to get all of the licensed tracks that we needed in the game. You know, there were a couple of tracks that one track we banned, kind of MIA kind of thing, and you can't really do anything about that. Another track, just legal, never getting back, and time constraints. But out of all of that, out of those tracks, there was just two. So it was fairly, having Jonathan on it and having someone with that much experience, he kind of just blasted through it. The thing that was, again, going back to the impact the game had on music, when I reached out I didn't have contacts for Feldy. Like we've interviewed 3 different band members that had songs in the game. We interviewed John Feldman from Goldfinger. Ludvig, help me out. I'm losing it.
Yeah, we had Larry Lalonde from Primus, and then we also had Jay Bentley from yeah.
And with those guys, I primarily just I hit up their info on their websites. I mean, that's how I did it. I just went to I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any contacts with them. I went to their websites, hit up their info went to Twitters and different Twitter accounts and just told them what I was doing. And it was it was pretty easy. Once they knew what we were doing, once they knew what this project was about, they were really helpful and accommodating us with interviews, because the game had such a big impact on their band that it just kind of was a no-brainer for them to want to be involved. So that was another kind of serendipity that we had, which was good.
Hey, sometimes just reaching out on the website works. That's how I got this interview, basically. I was
yeah. I mean, that's why people never, you never know who's on that info. And with one of them, with Bad Religion, it was Brett Gurewitz that ended up sending me an email back. I'm like, okay, this is the guy, So it was kind of cool that the way things worked out.
Yeah, I like to think I'd stay on top of like all the Tony Hawk news, but like I saw the trailer for the first time earlier this year, and as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I need to talk to these people and know more about what's going on. Just talk a little bit about like the development side. Since you come from the team that produced it, is there probably a lot of staff that gets interviewed for this? Do you guys talk about the studio's reaction to it? Because me growing up, I felt like I just went to school one day and everyone was playing Tony Hawk. It almost felt like an overnight thing. Looking back on it, it sounds like an overnight thing. If you could just talk a little bit about the developer side during all this, because it ended up becoming like one of the best-selling franchises. Do you remember those early days, and how much of that is like talked about in terms of developer reaction to like the first game's success?
Yeah, I mean, I think I strongly remember the feeling in the first couple of games more than the latter, because those had the biggest impact for me. It was just like going from switching careers and having all these things, and then I was sort of just completely over my head on knowing what to do, because it was a completely new career. So that kind of thing was kind of ingrained memories in my head. And to tell you the truth, while we were working on the game, the reason why I was put on the Tony Hawk video game was Neversoft had 2 licensed projects from Activision at the time. They brought on a Spider-Man game, and then they brought on what Joel, the owner of Neversoft at the time, called the small skateboarding game. And since I didn't have any experience in video games, I was put on the small skateboard game, which then blew up, obviously. And we really didn't have much of an idea of the impact. The bar was set really low. We had nobody from Activision like breathing down us or asking us questions. We had a really almost 100% freedom from the art side and design side to do what we wanted to do. And so it was really cool, but it's also scary because you don't know if you're doing something right. But we just kept on the path of doing what we liked and what we felt was fun. And we would bring, the game home and mess around with it on the weekend and then come back and go, hey, it might be cool to do this, that, and the other. What started keying us into the fact that it's going to be a fun game and people are going to like it is when I started bringing in focus testers to to test. We were literally going, and you probably couldn't do this today, but we were literally going to elementary schools and junior highs and putting posters on the wall with a little pull tab. Hey, you want to test a video game? Pull it, call us, And so I was bringing in kids every week, and we'd have designers and artists watching these kids playing the video games. And it got a little scary because we were getting no negative feedback. And when you're only just getting positive stuff, there's not much that you can fit. You're like, well, there's nothing here that is leading us into anything that we should change or fix. So it was a little bit, that was a little bit scary. But then, the biggest thing is when that demo hit, when the Pizza Hut demo hit, and there was a Final Fantasy game on it, and people were just, clamoring for the Tony Hawk video game. I think that demo disc sold more than most games sold that year. And that was right about the time that probably Activision put an offer up to buy Neversoft as well.
I forgot about Pizza Hut demo discs. You just brought me back talking about that.
Yeah, Pizza Hut demo disc. Then they had the Jam Pack. Then there was the Sony Jam Pack disc. Those two demos with the warehouse, I mean, that kind of keyed us into, hey, we got something special on our hands. People are talking about this thing, and it's just a one level demo. We had so much more game to add that we were kind of, but we were all still cautious, and we didn't know until the sales results come out and the thing gets pushed to number one.
So we're just gonna wrap up. You guys just want to tell us when the movie is going to release and where people can find it.
So the movie's releasing on demand platforms, iTunes, Amazon, DirecTV. Pretty much, if you go to our website or just go to our website, thpsfilm.com. We have all the icons of all the different platforms that it'll be streaming on August 18th, and it'll just keep rolling out further. It'll just keep spreading out further after that.
Thanks again for joining us. I could probably keep you guys on for another hour, but we'll let you go to the rest of your media calls for the day. Thanks again for joining us.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the time.